I'm Pat Doris. Welcome to The Story. We're going to start tonight with a gut-wrenching reality, the nightmare that more than a few parents are living with in our city right now. Their child is addicted to drugs and living on the streets of Portland, and there's not a darn thing they can do to help them. It's given these parents strong opinions about how things need to change, and it's our big story tonight. We'd like to think that government provides a safety net for those who fall through the cracks of society. People with mental health problems, people addicted to drugs or alcohol often have trouble thinking clearly and making good decisions. They need help. That's part of the conversation around the upcoming change in Oregon's drug laws. Take the help and avoid jail time. Get deflected from the criminal justice system. But what happens when the person refuses? Right now, very little. And the parents our Blair Best talked with, parents trying to help their addicted children living on our streets, say that must change.
So I'm gonna go back in time a little bit.
As a father, Tim Hatton spent years piecing together what went wrong in his daughter's life.
So Michaela Ann Hatton, she's just over 30, beautiful kid growing up.
As a young girl, Michaela found her stride in an Oregon City horse arena.
We were really close.
After high school, she met a guy. Everything changed.
She, like I said, had basically ostracized herself from everybody in the family.
Michaela ended up on the streets of Portland in a tent, addicted to drugs. Rarely could Tim find her.
It was March of the following year in 2022. I got the phone call from my ex, and she said she's OD'd.
It was fentanyl.
I can't believe this happened to my kid, kind of situation. Mm-hmm. Like, you know, you take this kid home when they're born, and you never expect anything like that. And
she survived, so they started looking for residential treatment. No beds were immediately available.
It was heart-wrenching to feel like you've been that close to something, and this may be my chance to help her.
Michaela went back to the streets. Here she is this past spring, still addicted to fentanyl and in the hospital again, but this time to give birth. A few months later, she finally got into treatment.
She made it 3 days and back on the street.
Jade, I'm back with some food.
Like Tim, Shannon Starr's daughter also lives on the streets of Portland addicted to fentanyl. She's 29-year-old Jade. We spent a day with her this past winter.
For me, it's just like, I'm just not ready to already sober up because I've already been there. I really feel stuck in a rut. I don't feel like this is the lowest point.
But as her mother, and I've known her entire life, she needs help. I need to get her the help, and I don't have the resources, and if the city's not helping me with those resources, then I'm just allowing my daughter to die on the streets of Portland.
As these parents fought the streets of Portland, in Salem, lawmakers were making changes to Oregon drug laws. Possession of substances like fentanyl will soon be a crime again, and if caught by police, people will have the option of treatment over jail time. However, they're not required to enroll in that treatment as it stands right now.
That's her probably about 14.
It's not the change these parents were hoping for.
If they catch her and they're not going to actually require her to get into diversion or what they call deflection, right? Going into another program, she's not going to get clean.
It's kind of like this hands-off approach where it's like, okay, we will kind of give a solution, but we're not going to enforce it.
It's useless. It's nothing. It's a big zero. So there's no help.
There's one thing they say would help.
Make it mandatory.
So the only way somebody like my daughter is going to get better is to be forced to get better.
It's sad that I have no help to help my adult child.
Until they start actually really treating these people like my daughter, things are not going to get better. She's already hit rock bottom, and that didn't do it.
If she dies on the streets of Portland, I don't want to have anything to do with this city or state.
Blair joins me now. Holy smokes. I mean, pretty clear that the parents think mandatory treatment's the way to go.
Right. They are confident that allowing their children to choose is not the way to go. They want to see that if they're caught with hard drugs, that treatment is mandatory, and they want to see the county enforce that.
Yeah, and very heartfelt as well. Tell us about the deflection building. How's that coming along?
So it's a work in progress. It's currently under construction in Portland's Central East Side. The county just hired a Baltimore-based treatment provider to run it. Now, this is all being done in a phased approach. As you can see from this graphic shared with county commissioners today, they're preparing for phase 1 in September, which is sort of basic and just getting their feet under them in this whole process. A place officers can take people they catch with drugs who choose treatment instead of jail to get connected to services. Phase 2 has some sobering services and medications added next spring. And then the final phase 3 will come in 2026. And that's sort of everything combined and running out of one place. So come September, again, it'll just be a place that officers can take people who choose treatment over jail to get screened and connected to those services. But again, those services, they're not required to enroll in those services. But today, Multnomah County Chair Jessica Vega-Peterson gave her definition of success in that first phase of deflection. Here's what she had to say.
When we talk about phase 1 in September 1st, success is a screening, referral, and to be determined engagement requirement for somebody who has voluntarily started participating in deflection. And the considerations that we have as we're having this conversation is the public safety needs, the impacts of fentanyl, the existing gaps in our treatment system. But this is something we are all committed to having a definition, an agreed definition of the success, that engagement requirement, and that's something that we're working on.
Seems a little fuzzy still at this point, and just over a month to go. So what about that question of how many times somebody can choose deflection over jail?
Right, that has caused some controversy, and what we know so far, Washington County, they're doing 1 per year. Clackamas County has not decided on a limit. They just told us there will be a limit, and that goes the same here in Multnomah County. We've learned there will be a limit. They're still deciding on what number that will be. Also want to point out that this option of treatment over jail time is only for people who are caught with possession. If they have outstanding warrants, they're going straight to jail. And I'll tell you from reporting on the streets, it is pretty hard to find someone using hard drugs that don't have outstanding warrants. Even the parents that we just heard from, they say their children all have outstanding warrants.
Wow.
Multnomah County Commissioner Sharon Myron today said people who do qualify for deflection still should face consequences.
So our opportunity here is not about, criminalizing and punishing drug use versus compassion. That's not the dichotomy here. It's about leveraging the threat of negative consequences to achieve positive results. That is compassion, because the longer people choose not to get treatment, the more at risk they are of dying, of being raped, of being injured, of getting horrific infections and losing limbs, of losing their families, etc., before they get on the path to recovery. So how can we leverage this to get people on a better path?
Today we got to look at the steps that people will follow as they go through this deflection program. Can you kind of outline it for us?
Yeah, so it's the first time that we're seeing this. This diagram basically shows what happens after someone gets dropped off at the deflection center. So basically up here, this line, if someone agrees to treatment or detox and there are available openings, great, they get transported to that center. If someone agrees and there are no current openings, which we know happens quite often, it's up to a peer support specialist to try and connect them with any upcoming available openings. It's unclear where they go from there, and the peer support specialist has to follow up with that person, but most likely they'll end up back on the streets from the looks of this diagram.
So still some holes or gaps in that piece.
Yeah, very much so.
Okay, thanks Blair. Fascinating stuff as always. So now it's your turn. What do you think about how Multnomah County's deflection program is taking shape? Thoughts, criticisms? Email them to us, will you? The address is thestory@kgw.com. Or if you'd prefer, you can call and leave a voicemail. The number is 503-226-5090. And finally, here's my opinion on all this. I watched about an hour's worth of the county's meeting today. You can find it on YouTube if you want and see it for yourself. It was fascinating and, in my opinion, disturbing. After all, these are the elected leaders of the most populated county in Oregon, and they are being treated like school children who must be led by a wise and more intelligent teacher, the board chair. That chair, Jessica Vega-Peterson, is keeping all of the elected commissioners and the public out of one of the most profound public policy discussions in some time. A leadership team is deciding important issues dealing with the deflection program behind closed doors. It includes things like how often people are caught with drugs will be able to choose deflection, what services will be offered, what consequences will there be if people start deflection and then change their mind. Those and many more questions were asked by Commissioner Julia Brim Edwards today. She also repeatedly asked why board members and the public are not allowed to join the meetings, and that question was repeatedly ignored. Commissioner Sharon Myron had her own list of issues with the plan and very correctly pointed out that as an emergency room doctor, she is the only one on that board who actually deals with people addicted to drugs or having mental health crisis and living on the streets. And yet her ideas are also not apparently welcome behind those closed doors. It really made me think about the county's new mission statement. You may have heard they recently spent $250,000 in taxpayer money for it. But actually, I want to bring you back to the old mission statement. It had 7 values, and number 4 is integrity. Be honest and trustworthy, creating transparency and harmony between what we think, say, and do. The new mission statement cuts those words right on out of there. And now I see why. If you watch the county meeting, you'll find there is definitely a lack of transparency and harmony. The person who can change that is the chair, Jessica Fega-Peterson, and in my opinion, she should change it now for the good of everyone. In a city and a county that prizes open meetings and open process, the secret meetings on the deflection program are a huge mistake, and that should end tomorrow. That's my opinion anyway. You don't have to agree with me, but I would like to hear from you. What do you think? Should the public be able to watch the drug deflection program policy being created now in secrecy? Why or why not? You know the drill. Send us an email. The address is thestory@kgw.com or call and leave a voicemail 503-226-5090. We really do read all your emails and listen to all your voicemails. I look forward to hearing from you. Moving on now, the Portland Opera today entered the fray and the argument over what should happen to the Keller Auditorium, Portland's largest and busiest performing arts center. The opera says leave it alone and build something new at Portland State University. City leaders agree something does need to be done with the Keller. Parts of the building are more than 100 years old and it is not ready for a big earthquake. The options on the table include tearing it down and rebuilding the Keller, which would require a series of closures for construction and could take 2 or 3 years. Or keep the Keller open while a replacement is built at Portland State University or the Lloyd Center east of the river. Various groups are weighing in on which option they want. The opera says the Keller Auditorium remaining open until a new one is built is not only key to rebuilding our performances and revenue, but also necessary for our continued existence. The opera's leaders say they are slowly coming back from the economic blow delivered by COVID shutdowns and that periodic closures of the Keller, if it were rebuilt, would threaten the arts community and all who contribute to it. Interesting. Coming up next, 30 years ago, fire ripped through the Cascade Mountains of Washington. We'll go into the woods to see what lessons from those awful times are helping keep homes and property safe today. That's coming up when the story returns. It's already been a record-breaking hot summer, and fire risk is top of mind for many of us, especially for those who've already seen the devastation that fire can bring. Meteorologist Leah Pizzetti with our Environment Northwest team takes a look back on multiple fires that ripped through the state of Washington in 1994 and how lessons learned back then are helping today.
30 years ago, flames erupted around the town of Leavenworth. Now, 3 decades later, locals who were here then remember it and say they still use those lessons learned then today. It was 1994. After a period of extreme drought and heat.
And they expect the wind to start up.
The worst case scenario in Washington.
It is blowing flaming embers that is causing these spot fires.
Multiple major wildfires started.
We're not really fighting it. We're basically trying to stay out of its way.
Dozens of homes lost.
It's gonna be okay.
Towns like Leavenworth evacuated.
Everybody was gone. It was a ghost town.
Kelly O'Brien flips through a photo album from back then. He's the current fire chief for Chelan County Fire District number 3, and in 1994 had just become a full-time firefighter.
I got kind of thrown into a situation that was pretty tough for a 24-year-old.
30 years later, he remembers the inferno well.
The fire itself was actually jumping in front of itself because of the wind. So you're getting these embers blowing across the mountainsides, and it would start a spot fire, and that spot fire would just blow up, and then it would start another one.
He says it was a learning experience not just for him, but for people living there too.
Our communities become more fire aware than they were in '94.
One major mindset change since then, the locals are proactive instead of reactive.
This one right here.
Sounds good.
That's the case for nearby homeowners like Bob Johnson, who had just started building a home when the fires started.
I had a call from a neighbor up the road, and in the background it sounded like the Vietnam War with airplanes and helicopters.
Fast forward 30 years, and now he hires private crews to maintain his land. His goal, keep his forest healthy and help out firefighters, taking steps like thinning trees.
This is just part of what we have to get rid of.
Leaving enough greenery to encourage animals to visit, but discourage fire.
If we pretend we're fire, where would you want to burn? This is not inviting, and this is filled with fuel.
This an important step in his neighborhood for another key reason. They are cut off from fire resources because they're not in the Chelan District 3 boundary, so if a fire were to start, there's a chance help would not be there right away.
Part of the reason it's outside the fire district is because we can't access that area year-round. We're not just a wildland agency. We fight fires in the winter, and I can't get up the road.
So Bob's neighborhood falls under the state's response.
DNR will tell you they don't fight structure fires, and they don't, and they're not set up to do that. They're there for the wildland component. If we're available, we're going. Legally, I have to protect my community first, who are paying the taxes to support the organization.
It's a complicated setup, so this preventative work being done to stop fires from starting in the first place is even more important.
Land 3 can't do all the fuel reduction themselves. Forest Service can't do it all, DNR can't do it all. But when the private citizens start doing it themselves, now you have an opportunity to have a big impact on the fuels surrounding the homes.
Bob says he's paid for the preventative labor himself, with state and Department of Natural Resources funds covering about 30%. But he says every penny is worth it.
Everybody loves their homes, whether they live in the city or the suburbs or the woods. And the idea of it being taken away so quickly, so unexpectedly, is a shocking reality that we all have to absorb. But up here, it's a message that seems to be a little more poignant because we're surrounded by beautiful things that are fuel.
And with these current efforts, both Bob and Captain O'Brien say they keep those fires in '94 in the back of their minds.
It's important to take the lessons that I learned personally on that and apply it to the 24-year-old that I just hired.
Hoping preventative steps now will keep a fire like this in the past.
The impact, though, it had to me was really what fire can do.
For Environment Northwest, I'm meteorologist Leah Pizzetti.
So cool, learning from the past. That's real wisdom. I love that area up there. Up next on the story, I have a scam warning for you from personal experience. What happened to make it seem like my computer was infected with a virus and how you can spot it and stay away from it if it ever happens to you. That's coming up next when the story returns. The KGW School Supply Drive starts in just over a week, but we need a little help from you. Just go to kgw.com/school. Sign up your organization and we'll send a collection kit your way. Last year we collected school supplies for more than 15,000 kids, and we want to help even more this year. And remember, the supplies that you collect stay in your local school district. Just visit kgw.com/school. Finally tonight, I want to warn you about a scam that's online that makes it seem like your computer is infected with a nasty virus. It happened to me recently, and instead of just moving along with my day, I wanted to share it with you so that you can be aware. Let's take a look at what's going on and what you can do to get rid of it. As I sat at my computer, I wanted to find some eye drops to help with my contacts, so I typed Amazon into the Google search bar. Not Amazon.com, which would have taken me to the correct site, just Amazon. It brought up a page with results, and I clicked on the very top one. This one has a green check mark. The one I clicked did not, and that should have been a giveaway. This very scary page popped up and seemed to take over my computer. I didn't know what to do, so I turned to our KGW computer engineering expert, Jason Chua.
Let's see what's going on here.
All right.
Okay. At first glance, this looks very scary.
Yeah.
It looks legitimate. It looks like something is very wrong with your computer. But the nice thing to know here is that it's just a web page. Web pages we're familiar with them having images. We're familiar with them having videos, text. And this is just very convincingly mocking a legitimate website.
Yeah, it's telling me virus alert and Microsoft Windows locked.
Yeah, so absolutely do not call the phone number you see on the screen. Do not contact anything you see here. It looks very alarming, and that's to make you feel alarmed, in danger, And when you're in that state, you're often not making those clear decisions.
Yeah.
And you may let someone into your computer who's not really looking out for your best interest.
So then what do we do when we get this?
Okay, first things first, don't click anything on the website. In most cases, these websites can't harm you if you're not interacting with them.
Cannot, okay. Still,
Still,
then what do we do?
simply close out of the website, close your web browser. You can even restart your computer if you want to, but in general, if you see this, it's alarming, but ultimately not dangerous.
So it's not really infecting my computer?
No.
So do I just click on the...
So just remember, when you're closing the window on your browser, don't click on any of the X's on that web page. Go to the very upper top right corner of your computer and click on that X to close the browser and make it all go away.
So nice to have experts here. Yeah, now you know. Google, by the way, is supposed to be able to screen out those scams and mostly does. We reported it to Google and it was gone just minutes later. Thank you, Jason. But I found reports in 2017 and 2018 where Google was fooled into allowing those very sorts of ads to get through. And so you can see they're still getting through every once in a while. I hope that explanation gives you a little peace of mind if that ever happens on your computer. Hey, that's the end of our show. Thanks for watching. And remember, the story, our collective story, well, that never ends. The good stuff's coming your way next. And I'll see you right back here tomorrow night at 6:30.